Hello again, YouTube, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing another guide-style video, this time for Latios, as I've alluded to the past few days on my channel. Latios has come out very recently, obviously. I unlocked it day one, and I've played it a lot since then. I have about 50 games on the Pokemon so far. And I think I've really developed a pretty good conceptual understanding of how it works, how to play it best, so I thought it'd be good to make a guide. Especially since a lot of people are unlocking this Pokemon on the free track right now in the dice rolling mini game. So if you're one of those players that's unlocking this Pokemon for free and will have it soon, this guide's perfect for you. You can get all the tips and tricks before you play it and sort of know what other players are thinking as they're playing it, maybe how to counter them even, right? Some feedback I've gotten in my videos in the past is that my guide videos are a little long and hard to get through at times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a pinned comment with timestamps for different points in the video that I'll be covering stuff like the overview, abilities, moves, everything. So if you only want to look at a specific section or want to refresh your memory or just go back somewhere, you can do that. I would also suggest that if you don't care about watching the video, you could listen to the video. There's going to be a visual component, obviously, to some extent with the webcam I'm using right now, which I also use when I stream. And also what's going on the screen otherwise. So if you want to be able to look at all that, you'll have to watch it, obviously. But you can also listen to the video, and I design my videos with that in mind. I often listen to them myself when I'm reviewing them, so there you go. And yeah, like I said, I do use my webcam when I stream on Twitch. I try to stream every weekend and sometimes during the week, twitch.tv/ZQMFBG. So definitely come check me out if you haven't. Give me a follow. I'd really appreciate that. And yeah, if you enjoy this video, be sure to like, tell me in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, any other feedback you might have, and subscribe for more content like this. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. So, Latias being a supporter and Latios being an attacker means that there are going to be some innate differences between the Pokemon. But even so, they're pretty similar in a lot of ways. I'll start with the differences first, I guess, since that's the easiest to illustrate. I would say that overall, Latias is less damage than Latios, but more survivability. And you sort of get a glimpse of that into that by looking at the base stats, right? So starting stats look pretty normal. Your HP is a little higher than most attackers, but still pretty low overall. And as you gain levels, your HP and your special attack are your main stats that are going up the most. Your defenses are honestly pretty meager at all levels, but your special attack is really, really high for a supporter. And having as much special attack as Latias does, she has a very good HP pool as well. That said, the low defenses means you are still pretty squishy against anyone with very high burst damage, so you still die the same way as Latios does quite often, just getting blown up by a speedster or something. So, not really much better in that sense, but better in other areas. Less kill threat than Latios, just by virtue of how the two Pokemon work in terms of their Eon stacks and how their abilities function. But still a pretty strong Pokemon, pretty high burst damage. And when I say high damage for a supporter, what I mean is you're not going to get the numbers that attackers get usually, but you're going to get a lot of kills and assists just by virtue of constantly putting numbers up in fights, and you'll still be doing better than most supporters do in the damage department. With all that out of the way, let's get into the ability. So, after using a move, increases movement speed by 50% for 2 seconds, decaying by 5% every 0.25 seconds. So, when you use a move for 2 seconds, you're going to be a little faster, and right at the start, you're going to get a pretty sharp boost of 50%, which obviously decays pretty quickly, but even 45, 40, 35, 30% are all pretty decent numbers. What it means is when you immediately use an ability, you can... What am I trying to say? You can move around pretty quickly, pretty easily. It's good for engaging, that is chasing targets down, disengaging, that is backing off from a bad situation, or just mobility, getting around the map as you're farming, maybe just walking around. It helps you move a little quicker when you need it. Latias obviously wants to partner with Latios, so you do get 2 extra benefits to this move while Latios is on your team. The first is that it increases your movement speed by 10% while near an ally Latios. I think what it counts as near is that you're both on the same screen, like you can see him on your screen and he can see you on his screen. If that is so, you will both get a 10% move speed boost. Now I know compared to 50%, 10% is not very big, But over the course of a game, it really is very noticeable, especially considering that early on in the game, most Pokemon move at a similar move speed. 10% means that in lane, you're constantly going to trade better than your enemies, because if they're approaching, you can hit them and back off, or if they're trying to get away from you, you can keep chasing them down and then back off when they turn to hit you. It makes it really easy to use guerrilla tactics with stuff like Swift and Confusion, where you're pinging them with abilities from far away and then backing off before they can punish you. It's very, very annoying to lane into this duo for that reason. It also just helps with getting around the map, obviously, and it just helps with positioning in fights and everything. Obviously, a little extra move speed never hurt anyone. There's also an active component to the move that can be used only if both Latios and Latias are on the same team. When not in combat, this ability can be used to fly to an allied Latios. And the icon for this ability is the levitate icon, and it's in the same place you would normally see your illusion on Zoroark, your trick on Hoopa, your move swap on Mew, stuff like that. What it'll do when you press that button is, whether Latios or Latias presses it, it works the same on both, so I'm just talking about both. It'll drop a beacon at your ally's location, like a little purple arrow, and after a few seconds, I think 2 or 3 seconds, it doesn't say here, and I don't remember off the top of my head, I think it's 3 seconds. You will fly in the air and then land where that beacon is. So when you press the button, it places the beacon, and then when the move resolves, you'll land at the beacon. So if your Latios is here, when you do it, you'll put the beacon there, and then you might walk somewhere, and then you'll land over here. So you want to be a little aware, I think, of where your teammate is, but generally, the biggest thing to keep in mind is they're not going to be right next to you when you drop in, usually, unless they wait by the arrow. A few things of note is, first of all, the ability goes on cooldown for 90 seconds after it's triggered for both Latios and Latias, meaning the ability shares a cooldown across both Pokemon. If one uses it, the other has their use set on cooldown as well. So you want to really plan around that. If you're using yours, it means your ally can't use his for quite a while, and vice versa. But obviously, if you're right next to each other after you use it, you probably won't need it again right away. But just, in general, something to think about. Let's see. While channeling this ability, the user can move around. Once the channel is completed, the user becomes unstoppable and flies to where Latios was when this ability was activated. That's the beacon I mentioned before, and the 3-second channeling time. Notably, you can be stunned during the channel, in which case it'll be cancelled, but the cooldown will still be used, meaning you cannot teleport to your ally, and you'll be stuck where you're at with whoever just stunned you or disabled you or whatever. So you really want to be careful when you use this move. Think of it like teleporting home, where you don't want to just do it somewhere where the enemy team is going to hit you and prevent it from happening. You want to use it in a location or situation where you're not going to be interrupted. So either you're far enough from the enemy, or you're hiding in a bush where they're not going to find you, something like that. And you also do get to move around a little bit after you start the channel, so you can start it and then walk over and hide in a bush maybe, or you can even use it while you're running away from an enemy, and then when it resolves, you'll fly away from them. So it's good for those things. And the teleport across the map is really, really meaningful. It's not often a Pokemon can do something like that without Hoopa in the game. And so that they both can do that multiple times in the game, since it's a 90-second cooldown, is pretty significant. It means that you can be farming in one place, or your Latios can be farming in one place, and you both connect and get that XP share value on Latios. It's probably XP sharing for Latios. It also means that you can do objectives together, like if Latios is farming one place or clearing jungle, you can wait by an objective and it'll come to you. It can also help with escaping bad situations, like I said before. Either person can levitate to the other if they're in a bad location or need some help. It can also help with repositioning during Rayquaza, because you might be split on the fight, and you might want to levitate across the map to avoid a speedster, or just to join the fight in the right location. That's all useful. And I think one of the most obvious applications, one of the best, is using it to heal. So you can teleport home, right? And then sit in base and heal to full HP, and then use levitate to fly back out to your teammates wherever they are on the map, which is even better than using a jump pad, right? So it's very, very useful in a lot of ways, very, very flexible, and it's for those reasons the cooldown's very long and that it can be cancelled. So really be careful when you're using this move, but do know it's a very powerful move. And even without any of this, even with just Latias in the game, this component is still very useful. Just being able to move around faster after using moves Gives so much mobility, similar to a Alolan Raichu in that sense. The attack I'm not going to talk about too much because it's pretty crap. I'll just mention it briefly. Shoots a psychic projectile at an opposing Pokemon, damaging them. Latias has no boosted attack. So, you just press your button, it's damage. It's kind of slow as an attack. That's pretty much it. I would really recommend not running attack speed items on Latias because your attack is pretty much worthless. It's mainly just used for pulling aggro on wild Pokemon or on securing last hits against very low targets. Otherwise, I don't really focus on using it, especially since you have to stop to use it, like any auto attack. I think that really has anti-synergy with what you want to be doing with Levitate, where you're constantly moving, constantly using abilities to move around. So, not a very good attack. But anyway, you get two starting moves to choose from, obviously, like always. We'll talk about Swift first, since that's the better move. Shoot star-shaped rays in a large area in the designated direction, damaging opposing Pokemon in the area of effect. So, the fan it shoots in is a little wider than the fan, or the area that Latios' Swift shoots in. It has pretty significant damage, and it comes out very, very quickly. Honestly, this move is very, very strong for a starting move. It's great at securing farm, great at hitting multiple targets, and the stars pierce their targets, so if someone's hiding behind an allied Pokemon on their side, or a wild Pokemon even, it's still going to hit them with the Swift. So you can secure farm, and also punish people who are trying to steal farm, or anything like that. Again, with Levitate, it's also very good harass in lane. You can throw out a Swift to hit both the enemies, and then back off, making it hard for them to react. The damage isn't going to be too insane there, but it's still annoying enough to where they have to back off if they're fighting for too long. So it's useful in that sense. Mainly used for securing farm, though, I think. It's got a 6-second cooldown. We'll talk about Confusion now. Has an 8-second cooldown, so it's a little longer. It's the worst move overall, I think. Part of that being owing to the lower damage output. But anyway, releases a weak telekinetic force in the designated direction, and they do mean weak, damaging opposing Pokemon hit and decreasing their movement speed by 20% for 2 seconds. So as you'll recall, that's the same duration that your move speed boost from Levitate lasts. The idea being that if you hit someone with Confusion, they're slowed down for the same time that you're sped up. It's not the same amount, obviously, but it's still it's a decent slow. 20% isn't a huge amount, but it's okay. In junction with Levitate, this move is very, very good for chasing targets down or backing off from targets. So it has both offensive and defensive utility, even though it's a very low damage move. My main use, again, in lane is for secure. I'll try to time my Confusion and Swift such that I'll throw out my Confusion first, and then as the projectile is hitting my target, I'll use the Swift as well, so they hit at the same time. And it gives the enemy a very small window to react and secure the last hit against you. It makes Latias very good at last hitting. I would say that's the best way to be using these moves together in lane. I really wish you could upgrade this move first. It is the worst move overall. It's the one that you take at 3, you take Swift at 1. But it is what it is. Still an okay move. Next, we'll talk about the level 5 moves. Upon leveling up to level 5, you can choose from Dragon Pulse or Dragon Breath, both of which have a 5.7 second cooldown. I know it said 6 seconds before, but as you can see, when you hit level 5, which is when you learn these moves, you do get a 5% cooldown reduction on Latias. So these moves will never have a 6 second cooldown. The highest they'll ever be is 5.7 seconds, so do keep that in mind. These moves also both use the Eon Power mechanic, similar to Latios. To explain how this works, once you pick either of these moves, and the same as on Latios, so this is again talking about Latios, you will begin accumulating Eon Power whenever you get a last hit or hit an enemy Pokemon with one of these moves. Whether it's Dragon Pulse or Dragon Breath, or on Latios, it is Dragon Pulse and Draco Meteor. You will always get 2 Eon Power for last hitting, and you'll get a different amount depending on which you choose for when you hit enemy Pokemon. And for one use of the move, you can hit multiple enemy Pokemon, so you can accumulate Eon Power faster that way. And then as you're gaining Eon Power, the moves will have different effects, and at a certain point, they just increase in damage once you've maxed out the power for the full effect of the move, which for Dragon Pulse is 100 Eon Power, for Dragon Breath it's 61. I think Dragon Pulse is a little better of a move overall since it has a survivability aspect it provides to you, but Dragon Breath is a little bit better damage in the early and mid game. So I'll talk about both and the situations in which maybe you would choose one over the other. So Dragon Pulse. After learning this move, like I said, you get 2 Eon Power for knocking out a wild Pokemon, or 2 Eon Power per Pokemon from the opposing team hit by this move. When this move is used, Latias generates a beam in the designated direction, sweeping in a cone shape, and it's a very wide angle, damaging opposing Pokemon hit and restoring the user's HP once. So even if you hit multiple targets, you're only going to heal HP once. And you don't have to hit enemy Pokemon to heal, unlike stuff like Hose, Boosted, and Flamethrower. You can hit wild Pokemon and heal as well, giving Latias very good survivability with Dragon Pulse. The healing's pretty substantial too. It scales through special attacks, so as you're leveling up, it'll get better. But as you saw, Latias gets to have very high special attack from level 10 onward pretty much, so the healing gets very good in the mid-game and late game. Let's see. This move gains 2 telekinetic projectiles at 25 and 50 Eon Power, and 1 at 50 and 75 for a total of 6 projectiles. Like Latios, subsequent projectiles hitting the target deal 15% less damage, diminishing to a maximum of 75% less damage if all the projectiles hit the same target. For every 1 Eon Power accumulated beyond 100, projectile damage increases by 0.5%. Eon Power caps at 1099, but in my experience, I've never reached max Eon Power. I've never gotten anywhere close. The highest I've gotten on Latios is in the low 200s. Highest I've gotten on Latias is low 100. So yeah, don't worry about that cap. For all intents and purposes, the move has no cap in terms of Eon Power. So like I was saying before with Eon Power, this move's max ability effectiveness is 100, and then it just gets damage after that. And from 25, 50, 75, and 100, you'll get 2 beads, 1 bead, 1 bead, 2 beads. I call them beads, that's what they look like to me. Telekinetic projectiles, whatever you want to call them. So 25 is your biggest threshold for getting the first 2. 15, 75 each give you 1, and then 100, if you manage to hit it, will give you another 2. In my experience, getting to 100 on Latias is pretty difficult because you have to be using the move a lot to be getting that many stacks on it. And it has a longer cooldown than Latios' Dragon Pulse. You're just not going to be able to use it that often in most cases. Not to mention, you only get 2 when it hits an enemy, so you need to be hitting more than 1 enemy to get stacks on it quickly. Or last hitting. But then again, last hitting on Latias is not something you do a lot either, right? You're a supporter. You generally want to be helping your team out. And if you're running XP share, you can farm with your teammates and get the last hits and still give them XP and get your Eon Power, which is the best way to use it, obviously. But as a supporter, you don't want to be spending a whole lot of time farming. So generally, I would say you're looking for last hits when you're farming with your teammates. You want to secure those last hits. If they're smart, they'll leave the wild Pokemon low for you to secure. And then you can secure, they'll get the XP, you get the Eon Power. As the beam sweeps across its area, again, you can see in the picture there, it's very wide. For every target it hits, it will shoot some of the projectiles at that target. It'll split them up evenly as possible between the targets there. So if you hit 2 people and you have 2 projectiles, they'll each get 1 projectile. And it'll add a small amount of damage. I'll look at 9, so that's usually when you'll have 2 projectiles in my experience. And yeah, even at 9, you can see 1040 healing. That's like a fifth of your HP pool. If you have a Shell Bell in there, it's pretty good healing. And then it does about 1,000 damage to each target you hit. Very, very solid stuff. At level 11, the beam slows Pokemon by 30% for 2 seconds. And again, since it's hitting in a pretty wide area, it's a pretty decent slow. I really like this move. It gives good healing, it does solid damage. It's great at farming because you can hit multiple farm targets. It's great at fighting because you can hit multiple enemies. It's also good at checking bushes. I'll show again in a practice lobby how you can scan bushes with it very effectively. What else? That's pretty much it for the Dragon Pulse move. It's best against multiple targets. Obviously, it's not really very good damage against one target. They will take all the projectiles, but obviously projectiles diminish in damage. That's less of an issue with Latios, where your inherent damage is a lot higher than Latias is. But you still can do decent burst against one target if they take all the beads, as I like to call them. I've secured many kills late game against targets that are at, I wouldn't say low HP, but kind of low, maybe a third or a fourth of their HP. Dragon Pulse can finish them off just with the projectiles, so it's a pretty strong move. That said, we'll move on to Dragon Breath now. Again, after learning it, you get 2 Eon Power for wild Pokemon knockouts, or 3 per enemy Pokemon hit by this move. And part of why they made them different, I think, is the area of effect in this move is very, very wide. So especially in lane, it's pretty easy to hit multiple targets, whereas this is a lot less good at hitting multiple targets, especially since the starting range is not very good. When this move is used, Latias exhales a mighty gust in the designated direction, damaging opposing Pokemon hit and decreasing their special defense by 30% for 3 seconds. So you're not healing yourself, but you're making your target more vulnerable. This move is mainly good for helping your teammate secure KOs, and ideally your teammate that you're fighting with is someone that deals special damage, which is again why Latias is really good with Latios, is your Dragon Breath can help Latios get those kills more easily. Let's see, this move gains increased range at 31 and 61 Eon power. This will be marked in the aim reticle of the move as you use it. You'll be able to hold the targeting thing, and you'll see that it's a further target than it was before. So it scales up twice until, so I sort of think it like a short range Dragon Breath, then at 31 you get the medium range, and 61 you get the long range Dragon Breath. And it will hit all targets it shoots through. And it comes out almost instantly, so it's very, very fast, very good burst damage. Better burst damage than Dragon Pulse in the early mid game, because as you'll see it by these first numbers, this isn't projectiles, but without projectiles, this does less damage than this. And this can still hit multiple targets. Not to mention, since you hit your max stacks earlier at 61, you'll be gaining 0.5% damage sooner. So the damage you're dealing is actually pretty high with this move on its own. I think Dragon Pulse with the projectiles does more damage overall in the late game, but in the early and mid game, this move is very, very good damage. And the special defense decrease can really help certain allies finish off certain enemy targets. At level 11, you get the plus, obviously, which, like Dragon Pulse, provides a slow by 30%. This lost 3 seconds out of the 2 seconds of Dragon Pulse, though, so the slow here is better, as well as the stack accumulation. So in some areas, Dragon Breath is a better move. I still think overall, though, I like Dragon Pulse better, because the healing really helps with staying alive. And again, your HP is really substantial as Latias as you continue to get levels. By the time you hit level 12, you have nearly 7,000 HP. That's what some defenders are looking at in the mid and late game. So your HP pool is pretty decent, actually. So getting heals to go with that is really, really helpful. Dragon Breath also is less likely to hit multiple targets in the late game, just because of how people are lining up in fights generally. It's still good for finishing off low health distant targets, though, so it's nothing to scoff at. I think either move is pickable. I think Dragon Breath is a little, or Dragon Pulse is a little better overall, and a little better for newer players newer to the Pokemon. So if and when you start out playing Latias, I would recommend starting with Dragon Pulse, and you can maybe try Dragon Breath once you experimented with Dragon Pulse a little bit first. Let's see. Those are your level 5 moves. Now let's look at your level 7 moves. These will replace Confusion. You can choose from Mist Ball or Dragon Shear. I'll talk about Dragon Shear first, because again, I think this one's a little better than Mist Ball, and you'll see why in a moment. They both have the same cooldown of 7.6 seconds. Dragon Shear. Rallies the designated allied Pokemon for 3 seconds. This move can be recast within 3 seconds to rally a second designated allied Pokemon. Alternatively, the user can target themselves. However, the recast must be used on an allied Pokemon. The user and the rallied Pokemon gain a shield, and the rallied Pokemon deals increased damage with their next hit. So, when you use this move for 3 seconds, whoever you use it on, whether yourself or an ally, they'll get a shield that scales with your special attack, and they'll get an attack damage boost, so boost to the next attack they deal, by a fixed amount as well, that scales with your special attack and the target's level. So if you use it on a high level target, they'll get boosts from your special attack and they're really high level. If you use it on yourself, it's okay, I guess. It makes your attack a little better, so it helps with farming in that sense. You also don't need a target to use this, since you can use it on yourself, so it can help just to proc your levitate and get a move speed boost while you're moving around on the map. It's good for that. Notably, the first use can always be used on yourself or any ally. The second use must be used on an ally. So if you use the first hit, it targets an ally. You can't use the second hit on yourself. You have to target that same ally or someone else. If you target the same ally, you fly to the allied Pokemon and rally the user as well. So they'll only get their shield the one time, but you get a shield again, and you also get the buff again. Let's see. This move's cooldown begins once the recast is used or expires. So you want to use it pretty quick to get it on cooldown again. So Oftentimes, if you're using it just for movement, you can double click it or double press the button with auto target to target the same target. So you'll boost them, then fly to them immediately, and you'll also get a shield in the boost, and you'll get the movement speed as well. Both uses do trigger levitate though, so sometimes it can be strategic to use one use, you move around with levitate, then use another before that 3 seconds is up to get another levitate boost, and give another buff to your allies, and then put the move on cooldown there. Also of note, if the designated ally is Latias, so if either of this move's uses targets Latias, then Latias will additionally gain 20% movement speed for 2 seconds. That's really huge. On top of his levitate bonuses, what he gets from just being around Latias, the extra 10%, it really helps keep your Latios alive, especially with the shield. This move is so good when you have a Latios on your team, but even without a Latias, it provides extra mobility to Latias to help keep you alive. The shield and the damage just help your team in general. Honestly, it's a really solid move in a lot of ways. It's just great for survivability, damage, mobility. Just really useful move. Has a lot of utility. Your plus move at 13 makes the shield larger, so we can look at what that looks like. At 12, the shield will be 1292. At 13, it jumps up to 1689. So it actually is a pretty substantial bonus, but as a supporter, and especially if you're using XP share, you're probably not going to hit 13 in most games. In most of my games, I hit 12, sometimes 11 if the game isn't going so well. Sometimes 13 if the game's going really well, but you usually end up at 12. So I would say don't plan on this too often, but when you get it, it's very nice. Now we'll talk about Mist Ball, which I think is less good overall than Dragon Cheer in pretty much every area, but it's still a useful move in some ways, so I'll talk about it. And yeah, I would say the biggest thing is it's only really pickable when you don't have a Latios. Since Dragon Cheer is so good with Latios, I would only ever pick Mist Ball if I don't have a Latios, but even then Dragon Cheer's mobility is very useful. You might like Mist Ball though, so I'll read it. It is a lower win rate move, so do keep that in mind. I think Dragon Cheer is better. I would recommend your starting moveset be Dragon Pulse, Dragon Cheer, and then maybe you can try Mist Ball and Dragon Breath as you experiment more. But anyway, this move works very similarly to Lesser Purge. You're going to shoot a projectile, and then when you press the button again, or after 0.9 seconds passed, the projectile bursts with Latios. Or Latios obviously is going to burst and debuff them and do a bunch of damage. With Latios, it's going to create a cloud of mist. The cloud of mist can damage targets up to 3 times. So if it hits someone and they stand in the mist, it'll damage them 3 times. If the mist is there and they walk into it, they'll start ticking their damage, and they can take damage up to 3 times. It leaves an area of mist that will damage targets up to 3 times. That's pretty much how it works. And whenever they're damaged by the mist for the first time, they get their movement speed decreased by 30% for 2 seconds, and then they're marked for 1.5 seconds. Marked opposing Pokemon deal 25% decreased damage. If either Latias or Latios deals damage to marked opposing Pokemon, it increases the duration of the mark by 0.5 seconds. This duration extension can be continued indefinitely. So that might sound like a reason to use this move with Latios, but I think the benefit of Dragon Cheer is much more widely applicable. Mist Ball is pretty much you want to be hitting the same target to make them deal less damage for longer, but quite honestly, it's just not very feasible in my experience. Because the buff only lasts for 1.5 seconds, trying to extend that is sometimes difficult. Like, you might Mist Ball someone that's distant, and you're not able to hit them, so they only get the decrease for 1.5 seconds, and that's it. And the damage isn't even that good, right? It's kind of a low damage move. It does technically do more than 1 extra damage proc of Dragon Cheer. Remember, you get 2 of these, so this is going to still be more damage than this most of the time. I guess this is a little better at helping you farm solo on the map, but again, as Latias, you really don't want to be farming solo on the map very often, so it's not really a situation you should be finding yourself in. The duration extension can be continued indefinitely, means that if you keep hitting the same target, they can potentially have their damage decreased for a very long time, but again, that 1.5 seconds makes it very difficult. That said, at level 13, you do double the mark duration to 3 seconds, which makes the move significantly better, I would say. But that you have to wait till level 13 to get that is pretty rough. And again, you're not going to get to 13 by Rayquaza very often on Latias, so I wouldn't really plan around this. So yeah, it's kind of a mediocre move compared to Dragon Cheer. It's still okay. I've used it some here and there. It's not terrible. I think Dragon Cheer is just better overall, though. Let's see. Let's talk about our Unite move now. Mist Blast. which unlocks at level 8, notably. So your power spikes on Latias are 5, 7, 8, 11, and 13. Let's see. We'll take this up to 8. Aims at the designated Pokemon from the opposing team and charges power for 1.8 seconds before releasing a pulse, damaging all opposing Pokemon hit. Resets moves cooldowns immediately after releasing the pulse and increases cooldown reduction by 20% for 9.5 seconds. So this move is very, very similar to Latios' move. You target someone, and then once the attack goes off, it'll hit them, and then anyone else the attack passes through. So if you're on the enemy team and you see this move used on someone, don't get in that line. You're not going to body block, you're just going to take damage with them. Not a good idea. Both this version and Latios version give you a cooldown reset and increased cooldown reduction for a duration afterwards. Latios's gets you 60% cooldown reduction for a shorter duration, whereas Latias's is a smaller cooldown reduction but a longer duration. Which, in general, is how Latias wants to play, right? You want to be doing stuff for a long time, really helping your team in fights, playing as a supporter, you know? Whereas Latias, you want that burst damage, you want that really low cooldown duration, you want to Dragon Pulse multiple times really quickly. So this sort of illustrates how the Pokemon are played differently. The damage is pretty substantial, but like Latias, you can get stunned out of it, which will put the move cooldown to 90%. So do be careful of that. It will still proc Energy Imp and or Buddy Berry if you're running one or the other. I'm not really sure either is worth running on Latias, but they are options, so I just thought I would mention them. There's also a component that works with Latios specifically, obviously, and this applies to Latios for Latias as well. If Latios is also aiming its Unite move at the designated Pokemon from the opposing team, the pulse stacks and explodes, dealing damage around the target as well. The damage area applies to the target and anyone around them, so it just flatly increases the damage of the move. Very, very solid stuff. Notably, the damage of the last hit, the explosion, will apply to whoever targeted second. So if Latios targets first and then you respond, it'll be your explosion damage, which tends to be lower than Latios. So in my experience, in my opinion, I think it's best for Latias to ult first and Latios to ult the same target. So Latios' burst damage is what's used. But either way is fine. Sometimes Latios uses ult and then you as Latios will see that and you can target the same person, or vice versa. I like to save my ult with Latias until I know my teammate has it, and then I'll try to fight near him if he's Latios. And so we can ult the same target and get that extra damage, because it is pretty strong, actually. And then like all Pokemon, you get a buff when you use it. You'll get a 30% movement speed boost and 20% shield for 6 seconds, which isn't as long as the cooldown reduction, but it means for that first 6 seconds after you use the move, you get cooldown reduction, move speed, and shield, all working very well with Levitate to keep you alive, right? So in some ways, Mist Blast is a good survivability move. Just keep in mind you don't get this boost until the attack goes off. So if you get stunned during that 1.8 seconds, you don't get it. A few things to note about the move in general is when you use it, you can still use battle items. So if you have an eject button or an X speed, you can use it to keep away from people to avoid getting stunned, or to reposition to try to line up your shot to hit multiple targets with the collateral. Either option is there for you. The cooldown is pretty long, so I would say you really don't want to waste it. You want to use it on a target that's going to be someone that you want to kill. And I think there are pretty much two ways I choose targets in fights. One is choosing a target that's at half or less HP to help secure that KO. Even if I'm not the one landing the KO, a hit this big is going to set anyone at that HP percentage quite low, right? And then, or maybe someone else was already hitting them. So either way, they'll probably get knocked out. Another way is using it on a very tanky target who's in the middle of their team, because it can be difficult for their team to spread out in a team fight sometimes. And so the odds of them lining up with someone else are actually pretty common in my experience. So you have that as well. Not much else to say about the Unite move. Like I said, very similar to Latios's, weaker damage overall, but still a very strong move. And that you get at level 8 is very interesting. I like that because if you're running XP share and you have a Latios in your lane, he'll hit 9 around the same time you're hitting 8, ideally, and then you both have your ults to use right away, right? Very cool stuff. Let's talk about held items now. So I've already alluded to it a few times. I think as a supporter and as a level-hungry Pokemon who wants 5 and 7, XP share is pretty much essential on this Pokemon. The only time I would consider not running XP share on Latias is if you have 3 helpers on your team. So like 2 defenders and Latias, or another supporter and defender, or even 3 supporters. In which case you can sort of run a more damage build and run another damage item instead of XP share. But otherwise I think it's really good. Notably, I think pretty much, yeah, I think every other support in the game gets their moves at 4 and 6. Latias is at 5 and 7. Which is why I say Latias is a level-hungry support, which is why I think XP share is good. That said, I think your other 2 moves, you should have 1 damage move and 1 survivability move. And the reason I choose Drive Lens and Shell Bell as my default is the cooldown reduction. 9% cooldown reduction on top of what you get at base. So if you're at, 8 and you have your ult, you have 14%, which is pretty substantial when you're trying to get stacks on Dragon Pulse as quickly as possible. Like I said, this is the moveset I'd recommend for any beginners: Dragon Pulse, Dragon Shear. This item set pretty much is what I would also recommend for beginners. Battle item, X Speed, is the highest winner at the moment, and I think really good because you can use it during your ult. Your moves are kind of long cooldown, so it gives you a way to move around when you don't have one of your moves off cooldown. And it's one of the lower cooldown battle items, so I think it's really useful in a lot of situations. And also on supporters in general, you just want to be able to reposition in fights, or run over to team fights that are happening, or help your teammates, and this just helps you do all of that more efficiently. Let's see, in terms of your damage item, I have Drive Lens selected again because the cooldown reduction is there, but also when you get full stacks, it gives you the second most special attack you can get from one item, the most being special attack specs. Although, that said, this move gives 12% at max stacks, and at level 13, well, let's just do some math, right? 720 times 1.12 is 806. I believe special attack specs gives, what is that, 70? It gives about 110, so this is a little less than that, but it's still close, which goes to show this is a very good item Pokemon with high special attack. And obviously, if you're playing Latias right, you're going to be getting a lot of kills and assists. You're going to be participating in a lot of fights, so this will build stacks very quickly in a game where you're playing well and things are going the way they should. You could say, well, I don't always want to plan on things going well, so you might want to run something else instead. I would say other valid damage items would be stuff like, where is it? Like I said, special attack specs if you think you can stack, although I would not recommend that since, as I said before, at low HP, or at low levels, your HP is still not very good. It's like better than some attackers, but you're still pretty squishy, so it can be hard to stack on this Pokemon. But if you want to try, this item can be good. Slick Spoon is good against defenders, obviously, or all-rounders, anyone who has high special defense. Wise Glass's 7% boost is still pretty good when your special attack gets as high as it does in the late game. So that's not bad either. It also gives you a better boost earlier on than Drive Lens does. This gives you no percentage early in the game. This gives you 7% right away. Let's see, what other options are there? Curse Incense is good if you need a curse in your game, if they have some Pokemon that relies on healing or sustain. This can be really useful for shutting them down, for making it so your team has an easier time killing them. What else? Energy Amp can be good for cooldown reduction and for giving your Unite move a lower cooldown and giving a better buff after you use it. But I think that you have to wait till level 8 for this move's full utility to be unlocked makes it somewhat less valuable than Drive Lens. A very common damage item I would not recommend is Choice Specs because, again, you want to be using moves off cooldown pretty frequently. So this 8-second cooldown threshold is something that you're going to be constantly sort of missing in awkward ways. Again, if we look back at this main page, or even just look here, right? Let's say we're at level 8. We have 14% cooldown reduction, right? This move is already going to be reduced from 6 seconds. So you're pretty much going to get a Choice Specs every other Dragon Pulse, which is part of why I think this is not a very good item on Latias. I think this is best, but I think the other things I listed are good as well. Wise Glass, attack specs, Slick Spoon, Energy Amp, Curse Incense. Curse Incense is probably the most viable otherwise from Drive Lens, just in terms of helping your team. And in terms of your survivability item, I have Shell Bell there, again, because of cooldown reduction. But I think also, this item's just really good on any Pokemon with high special attack, because, again, the special attack healing scales with your special attack, and has the same cooldown it uses as Choice Specs. That might be a reason that you might not want to use it, but again, I think the cooldown reduction helps make up for that. So it's a little awkward in the same way Choice Specs is, but it has the cooldown reduction angle and the healing angle that I think make it worth running anyway. If you don't like Shell Bell, or if you want to consider other defensive options, I think Resonant Guard is great on any supporter, obviously. It really helps you win your lane, and again, Latias being kind of a higher HP damage dealer, this item can be very, very useful for giving your allies extra shields throughout the game. You also have Focus Band. Since you do have a decent HP pool in the late game, you just lack the defense. So this can give you a little more defense throughout the game, while also giving you a way to regenerate a lot of the HP you lost pretty quickly. And again, with the large HP pool that you get in the mid-late game, this can really give you a lot of healing. The only other defensive option I really consider is Buddy Barrier, because you get the shield when you press your ult, so it helps you survive even if you get stunned out of it, so your ult still has some utility even when it's not working the way you want it to. And your HP pool being what it is does make Buddy Barrier better than it normally would be, but that it's only giving HP and no special attack boosts, and no HP recovery effect is pretty meager in my opinion. I would say these are the two better defensive options, and this is the best one. This is sort of the best build, I think. But as I've said in all my guides before, feel free to experiment, do what works best for you. Don't just take my advice as flatly just do that and don't think about it. This is obviously what I have on screen right now is a very good starting point if you're playing the Pokemon for the first time. These items, these moves, this battle item, all this stuff. But as you play the Pokemon more, feel free to experiment, try different things, try what works best for you. I think this is what's best overall, in my experience, in my opinion, but I could be wrong. I'm just one person. And if you have a different experience, let me know in the comments below. I'd really be curious to hear. Let's talk now about combos. Obviously, the best Pokemon you can have on your team as Latias is Latios. It makes your Dragon Shear way better, it makes your Levitate way better, it makes your ult way better. It gives you a Mist Ball thing sometimes, I guess. Don't use Mist Ball, use Dragon Shear if you have a Latios. So it gives you a lot of things that are way better. The Pokemon both really thrive together. I think they're both a full tier letter upgraded with each other on the team. I think Latios is S tier with Latias, and Latias is A tier with Latios. So they're obviously a great combo with each other. But other combos that work well together with Latias are pretty much any high damage late game all-rounders. So stuff like Charizard, Blaziken, Zacian, Pokemon that want to do high damage with their attacks that can be boosted with Dragon Shear, but that also are a little tanky, little survivable to where you can play behind them and help rotate in and out with them with Dragon Pulse healing you, right? That lets you help tank some hits here and there, but not the whole thing. You still are a ranged supporter. You're just playing with them. It works very well for that. It also helps with the close range of this to play near your all-rounders, to be able to damage the same targets as them. What else? What other people are good with Latias? Any shield or heal supporters are really good with Latias, because you're already decently survivable on your own, so having more survivability tools from your other helper really helps keep Latias in the game, using your moves longer, and obviously the more of these you get off in the fight, the higher your team has their chance of winning the game. On top of that, I think any Pokemon with mobility makes Dragon Shear very, very useful, because it gives you more options for getting around in team fights. Let's say even Absol that sort of jumps away after a bad engagement, maybe you can back off with him and Dragon Shear to him. And hey, he doesn't mind having his attack damage boosted, he's an Absol. I will say also that most of the things I've just listed happen to work very well against Latias. I'm going to go over to Unite API, another great resource I mentioned in my videos before. You can look at any Pokemon to see the win rates of different builds and different Pokemon to pick with or against that Pokemon. So as you can see, the build that I'm using with X-Speed has a 51.8% win rate. Dragon Shear Dragon Breath with Eject Button is the highest win rate overall, 52.9%. Again, I think largely because of the damage aspect of this. But, how do I put it? I think in some ways this way of playing it is a little counterintuitive compared to this. I think this is a little easier to work, is what I'm saying, basically. But this isn't bad either, which is why I said Dragon Breath is still viable. I think Mist Ball is way less viable. You can see by the win rates it's way less good. But anyway, like I said, all the Pokemon that I was talking about being good with Latias are also good against Latias, because Latias gets bursted down pretty easily, so Speedsters, Dodrio, you don't want to fight against Dodrio. Latios can really punish his sister? Girlfriend? Whatever they are to each other, Latios punishes Latias. Doesn't really work the other way, though, unfortunately. And, yeah, you can see a lot of this stuff's pretty similar, right? Other picks that are good with Latias, any Pokemon that has high special damage they deal, since your Dragon Breath can lower their special attack, if you're running the Dragon Breath build. But this build, like I said, is very, very versatile, works with lots of things. I think the best way to showcase some other things I was talking about now is to go to the practice area. I can showcase sort of how to scout bushes and stuff with the different moves, as I mentioned before. And yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. I'm going to talk a little while longer and do a little more stuff, but I'm just saying right now that, again, I'd really appreciate if you like and subscribe, comment below what you think, all that good stuff. Let's see, so let's just... no move cooldown. Well, I just want to be max level so I can do everything. Oh, we'll take off the move cooldowns. And we'll get all our moves. So as you can see, you get 2 whenever you hit someone. The damage at max level is pretty long. And look, this angle as you're aiming it covers bushes very well. Look at how I can cover this entire bush no matter where I'm standing around it. Same with this one. I can cover pretty much the entire bush no matter where I'm standing near it. Even these long bushes over here, look at that. I can cover the whole thing and then some. I can cover it like that even. These bushes are a little harder to cover all of, but even right here, look at that. I cover the entire bush. This move is great at checking bushes. Dragon Share, like I said, you can use it when there's no one nearby, just for a move speed boost. And then your ult, like I said, you can use a battle item afterwards. So I can use my potion afterwards. Oh, that's another thing I was going to talk about. Other battle items you can consider. Let me open this again. I think X speed is best for the reasons I mentioned. Eject button's also very good, just for a, you know, a squishier Pokemon to quickly disengage from someone jumping on them. It's mainly, I would say you mainly want eject button against Pokemon that can burst you down quickly, like Absol, Dodrio, stuff like that. X speed is generally the most versatile item. Potion can be good if you're playing a bit of a tankier build, like maybe you're running 2 defensive items, right, like this, and so you want Potion. I've seen stuff like this work. The issue I have is you have 1 less cooldown reduction outlet, and you also have way less damage. And keep in mind, your healing that you get from Dragon Pulse scales with your special attack. So you actually do want good special attack in the late game, I think. Let's see. I think those are pretty much the only viable options. I really wouldn't consider running anything else on this Pokemon. I think X speed is best overall, for the reasons I mentioned. I want to just build some stacks to show you how the beads look. So you get your first 2 at 25, like I said before. There you go. And see, I got them when I used it that last time to get to 26, and it shot them right away. So as you can see, I'll do it again with 50. So then when I use it at 50, it'll shoot 3. I'm going to go ahead and reset my moves so I can do Dragon Breath as well to show you how the long Dragon Breath looks. So again, this gets 3 whenever it hits someone, so you will build stacks faster. So look, it's still short cooldown, we're going to use it, and now it's the medium, or not short cooldown, short range, now it's the medium range. So you saw I'm a little further than I was before. I'll get it to the long range now so you can see that. And look, now I can stand a little further away. So it goes from about here to about here to about here. And as you can see, it is a pretty fast move. It is used faster than Dragon Pulse, so in terms of helping your mobility, it's a little better there. But it covers less space than Dragon Pulse does. It's a little less good at hitting bushes. Obviously, I can angle myself with the bush to hit all of it. But from the side, I can't really hit all of it. And this bush, I only really can... the best I can do is like that. I can't really cover the whole thing very well. I can do this, maybe. But it's a little tougher, obviously. The damage is better burst, though, against one target in the early mid-game. But as you get more of the Eon power late game, I think that Dragon Pulse is better overall since you get multiple projectiles. But that is that. I think that is all I have to say about the Pokemon. Normally, I like to do a little gameplay at the end to show off some stuff I've talked about. But I have 2 really good replays on the channel right now that you can watch for stuff like that. So I'll just put links to those in the description and recommend that you check those out and check out more stuff like it as well. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoy, and I really wish you luck with your Latias games. Let me know in the comments what you thought, whether or not this video helped you. Hopefully it did. Hopefully my narration is informative. If you have suggestions for future videos, let me know. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.